believing I was cementing our familial bliss. I had a vasectomy. Yet, the birth control pills, hidden in our bathroom, sparked a search that unveiled my wife's infidelity and the shocking fact that our children were not mine. Overwhelmed by anger and betrayal, I plotted my revenge. Join me on this journey of discovery and retribution. This is my story. Enjoy watching it. When I walked into the bathroom, the carpet sparkled. It was sunlight peeking through the blinds. It grabbed my attention. I glanced down, careful not to step on anything like glass since I was barefoot. Caroline hadn't mentioned dropping anything, but you never know. At first I didn't see it. Without the light, it blended with the carpet. But then, a tiny piece of foil caught my eye. I picked it up. It was from a pill strip, the kind that pops out when you push the pill through. Usually these foil pieces stick to the strip, but this one had fallen off. It was plain on one side and marked on the other with a number 2. Since today was Wednesday, I guessed it was from Tuesday's pill. These pills were daily ones. I'm 35 and healthy, just like my wife Caroline. We both had our health checks recently and were in good shape. So why was there a pill packet in our bathroom? The first pill I thought of was a birth control pill. I thought Caroline wasn't on any pills. After our second child, I had a vasectomy, so there was no need for birth control. She never had period issues either. The thought crossed my mind that maybe she was hiding an illness from me. I worried for a bit, but remembered our clean health reports. If this foil was here, the pills might be too. I locked the door and started looking while Caroline was still asleep. I found them hidden in a box under tampons and aspirin. They were the same birth control pills she used before my surgery. Why was she taking them again? My heart sank. The only reason I could think of was that she might be seeing someone else. Caroline and I had been together for 9 years. We met after I graduated from university, where I was studying engineering, and she was working as an assistant. We started dating after meeting at a bar and got married a year later. Our kids, James and Sonia, are 5 and 2. I thought we were happy. Caroline went back to work after each child was born, loving her job despite it paying just enough to cover the nanny's salary. I was building an engineering firm with friends. We weren't rich, but we were happy. I put everything back and decided to think things through. Confronting her without proof was pointless. I needed a plan and more information. Who was it? How long had it been going on? Could it even be her boss? These thoughts terrified me. I even questioned if my children were really mine. I tried to stay calm and gather facts first. I searched online for DNA test kits and surveillance tools, small recorders for her car and bag, cameras for the house. I also looked into cloning her phone to see her messages and calls. It took days for everything to arrive. In the meantime, I watched Caroline. Nothing seemed off. Our routine hadn't changed. If she was having an affair, she was very careful, or it had been going on for a while. The packages came on Friday morning. I had everything sent to my office so no one would ask questions. I got DNA test kits, voice recorders, cameras, a cell phone, and a cloning kit. That day, I left work early. When I got home, the au pair was feeding the kids dinner. I let her continue while I went to hide the cameras, one in the bathroom, one in the living room, and one in the bedroom with a clear view of the bed. I heard the kids in the bath and helped them get ready for bed. I took a cheek swab from Sonia while the au pair was with James. I tucked Sonia in and read to her until she fell asleep. When I checked on James, he was still up, so I took over for the au pair and sent her home. Soon James was asleep, and I sent off the swabs for testing. The results would be back by Wednesday. Caroline came home on time, and we talked about our day. We had dinner, and then she showered. While she was busy, I hid voice recorders in her car and bag and cloned her phone. I checked the cloned phone but found nothing suspicious. Either she was very careful, or there was no cheating. The weekend was normal. We spent time together, making it hard to check if she took the pills. But I saw days missing from the strip, so she must have taken them. On Monday, I worked from home. Caroline went to her office, and I checked the cameras. The bathroom camera showed she took the pills, but the bedroom camera revealed a surprise. On Saturday, while I cooked dinner, she showered and then texted someone from a hidden phone she stored in the air duct. The phone wasn't in her bag, so she must take it when she leaves. I needed that phone. That evening, I watched her closely. She dropped her bag in the hallway and continued her routine. After dinner, while she showered, I searched her bag. The phone wasn't there. She must have hidden it in the vent again. I went to Sonia's room where the vent was. I found the phone, cloned it, and returned it before my wife finished showering. I sat by Sonia's bed. When my wife came in, she noticed and smiled, calling me a soft old man. We went to bed, and I checked the phone clone the next day. What I found shattered me. I couldn't focus, even when my secretary knocked on my office door. Michelle, my secretary, is in her 30s, dresses conservatively, and keeps our relationship strictly professional. I've never made advances towards her, unlike one of my partners who tried and got a stern warning from her about harassment. He wanted to fire her, but she stood her ground, threatening to sue if things didn't change. I asked for everything to be sent to my office to avoid any questions. I received DNA test kits, voice recorders, several cameras, a cell phone, and a cloning kit. After taking ownership of 60% of the company's shares, I was now a majority owner, up from 40%. Michelle left the office when she saw me, presumably to handle something urgent. Voices buzzed in the outer office, then silence. Michelle came back, locked the door, and sat across from me. She handed me some napkins, which she pulled out from her purse. I started wiping my eyes. "Tell me," was all she said. I showed her the phone with messages between Caroline and someone unnamed. They talked about secret meetings and intimate details only a lover would know. I realized I wasn't mentioned at all in their exchanges. "Do you know who it is?" she asked professionally. I shook my head and told her how I found a bookmark and about the pills. The story poured out. During my account, she held my hand, a first for us. "You need more information," she advised. "The DNA results come Wednesday. Can you wait till then?" I wasn't sure. She then told me our Portland office needed me urgently. "I booked your next flight. You'll be back Thursday," she said, and crafted a message to Caroline on my phone. "Something urgent in Portland. Back Thursday. Love you." Caroline replied quickly, asking me to let her know when I arrived. Michelle then called someone named Lorraine and set up a meeting. She told me to get ready, and when I came out, she was holding my jacket. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To meet an old friend, a divorce lawyer," she replied. We met with Lorraine, who was handling Michelle's divorce. Lorraine had seen many cases like this and discussed our options. She jolted me out of a daze with a slap, calling me by my name, asking if I knew what I wanted to do. Jokingly, I said, "Kill them both." Michelle surprisingly smiled. Lorraine explained that wasn't an option legally, but laid out other choices. Do nothing and pretend ignorance, file for a peaceful divorce, or take a more aggressive approach, including suing for adultery and possibly challenging paternity. She outlined consequences for each choice, from impacting the children to possible financial and social actions we could take against the other party. The information was overwhelming. "I'm just showing you your options," Lorraine said, "not pushing any." My thoughts raced. Doing nothing felt like conceding defeat. I knew I had to act, but was unsure how far I was willing to go. I've been too passive for too long. Option 2 is not happening. I put too much effort into our business and our lifestyle for her to take half and still rely on my support while enjoying herself with someone else. Option 3 is what I chose, going all out. Lorraine smiled and agreed to start the paperwork. She suggested we keep an eye on my wife to gather more proof. She asked if she could keep the phone since it wasn't helping me anyway. I agreed, and we left her office. Michelle then took me to a small, family-run hotel and booked a room for me. "Go take a shower and order some food," she instructed, taking charge of the situation. "I'll be back later with some things for you." I did as told, my life feeling like it was crumbling, yet here I was, in a hotel, ordering room service as if nothing was wrong. It was my way to handle the stress. I reflected on the past 9 years, feeling blindsided by everything. How did I not see what was happening? Was her boss, whom she always returned to, the reason she claimed to love her job? Or was it because she couldn't stay away from her lover? I was about to reach for a drink when Michelle entered. "Don't even think about it," she said firmly. "You need a clear head to make plans." "Plan?" I replied gloomily. I had a plan. A loving wife, 2 beautiful children. Now, I might not even be the father. My life is falling apart and you want me to plan? She paused, then responded sharply. Enough feeling sorry for yourself. Remember when starting the company how many times things went wrong? How did you handle it then? I recalled numerous challenges we faced, like losing important documents or financial pressures. And did you give up then? She challenged. That was different. I had a family to fight for, I said. You still have a family that depends on you, she reminded me, referring to our employees. 141 people rely on you. You're the only one who can keep the company going. Do you think she cares about them? If she sells your shares, you'll lose everything you've worked for. She was right. I couldn't let everything I'd worked for go to waste because of this situation. If the children were mine, I'd ensure they were cared for. But as for Caroline, she chose her path. I could mourn the relationship once everything else was secured. Fueled by anger and determination, I sat down with Michelle to plan. We were going to secure the future of the company and look after the only family I had left. Once I made this decision, the pain and indecision vanished. I was focused. Michelle nodded, pleased. That's the Gary I need right now, she said. Someone who plans ahead. We spent the evening planning how to protect the company. Initially, I thought about selling my shares, but Michelle advised against it, doubting the other partner's ability to manage. Instead, we decided to set up an offshore trust where I'd sell the company but stay on as CEO at a minimal salary. This would make me a millionaire on paper and protect my assets from legal claims. I also planned to cash out my retirement fund and free up the house's equity. Though Caroline and I bought the house together, it was in my name since she wasn't working then. I listed everything I needed to do and arranged to meet my lawyer the next day. After Michelle left, I showered and went to bed, unsure if I'd sleep much. I fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow and didn't wake up until my phone alarm rang the next morning. Caroline had sent a message asking if I had arrived safely since I hadn't updated her. Her message ended with, "Love you." I couldn't bring myself to reply. The words just wouldn't come. Michelle knocked on my door around 8. I showered again and was thinking about getting some breakfast. "Breakfast," Michelle said, signaling me to follow her. We went to a nearby diner and had bacon and pancakes with maple syrup. I was puzzled by my own behavior, acting like everything was normal when inside I felt broken. I thought maybe once everything settled, the full impact would hit me. But for now, I needed to focus on work. "Brian Spencer," Michelle mentioned. "Your lawyer called. He's free at 10 to meet with us. First, we'll withdraw your 401k and release equity from your house, then meet him," she planned. I was concerned that a record of my assets might still exist. "Can't the court just order me to pay her half?" I asked. Michelle smirked. "That's where a trip to Vegas comes into play. Spend a lot there, and by the time you file for divorce, you'll appear broke and in debt." This depended on whether the kids were mine. If they were, I'd put my retirement savings in a trust for their college. That way, Caroline couldn't touch it and might even end up paying me support since she technically earned more. "When will you get the DNA results?" I asked. Michelle said they were due today. I checked my email for the results, clicked the link, but then hesitated to view them. Michelle took my phone to check. "Not ready yet," she said after scrolling through. "Should be in the next 12 hours. We then headed to the bank, which was surprisingly quick in freeing up the house equity and cashing out my 401k. I closed all our savings accounts, transferring the money to a new account in my name, leaving only the joint account untouched. At the lawyer's office, he threw a wrench in our plans, but managed to work it out well. He reminded me of a prenuptial agreement I had signed, protecting the company in a breakup but not the personal assets. "For divorce, you're just an employee, so your salary and 401k are all that can be claimed," he explained. His suggestion was different from the divorce lawyers. Reinvest the freed-up equity and retirement funds back into the company by buying out a partner wanting to leave. This would reduce my available funds, lowering my financial profile for the divorce settlement. "What will I live on?" I asked, concerned about covering basic needs if my salary was tied up in loan payments. "Let's see about the kids first," he suggested, asking if I'd stay in their lives if they weren't mine. It was too painful to think about. "Don't overlook the potential lawsuit against her company, which might cover the loan, letting your salary bounce back," he added. He offered to contact the partner about selling his shares, which I appreciated. We left his office feeling a bit lighter, with plans in motion and possible outcomes ahead. Everything started falling into place, which usually made me feel good. But then I remembered the reason behind these plans, and my relief vanished, leaving a hollow feeling inside. We were at a diner for lunch when I dared to check my phone again. Just like before, I couldn't do more than click the email link before handing the phone to Michelle. I watched her face for any sign, waiting to see if I was a father or not. "I'm so sorry, Gary," she said gently, her voice less businesslike than ever. She handed back the phone and I read the results myself. Neither child was biologically mine, though they shared the same biological father, someone other than me. The shock of losing both kids turned into anger over the betrayal. Not only had she tricked me into believing they were mine, but she also convinced me to get a vasectomy, meaning I couldn't have kids of my own anymore. "Gary," Michelle said sharply, pulling me back, "now's not the time. Stay calm. We'll handle this." I tried to calm down, despite feeling intense anger and even considering drastic measures for revenge. Michelle led me out of the diner calmly. Lorraine called, wanting to see us, so we headed to her office. Lorraine looked serious as she shared a preliminary report from a private investigator. "Last night, a man stayed at your house," she said. "We couldn't peek inside, but I had cameras installed. I can swap the flash drives to see what happened," I suggested. "Do it, then let's plan," Lorraine replied, suspecting the footage would be crucial. I mentioned I was supposed to be out of town, but Lorraine checked her phone and found out the au pair was out with the kids. Michelle drove us to my house quickly. I swapped the flash drives and checked the house, but found nothing unusual. Back at Lorraine's office, we reviewed the footage. I avoided the bedroom footage. I didn't need to see that. But as soon as he entered, it was clear it was her boss, Bill Wainwright. The worst part was seeing him use his own key, greeted by James calling him Papa Bill and running to him. That broke me, and I started crying. Michelle hugged me for the first time, offering comfort. After I calmed down, Lorraine asked if I wanted to rest, but I shook my head, anger rising again. "What's next?" I asked. Lorraine had already found a breach in Caroline's company's fraternization policy, giving us a strong case. She phoned my company's lawyer for the prenuptial agreement, and his plan suddenly seemed perfect. "If your partner wants out, buy his share," she advised, putting everything into the company to protect it. We could also sue for various damages, depending on whether Caroline's co-worker wanted to sell his share. Michelle drove me back to the hotel, but as I was about to rest, there was a knock. It was Michelle, insisting I couldn't stay alone. "You can't be alone now," she said, gathering my things. She led me out and drove me to her house, which was surprisingly similar to mine. She showed me to a guest room. "Take a shower, dinner in 30 minutes, she instructed. We ate quietly. I couldn't even taste the food, my mind swirling with thoughts. I was too overwhelmed to express my anger or distress, focusing only on putting my plans into action. I was just going through the motions, my mind set on what was next when my phone rang. I hoped it wasn't Caroline. It was Robert. "Hello, Robert," I answered tiredly. "Why?" was all he asked. Robert and I had been friends since college, where we started the business idea together. I owned most of the company because I invested more money at the start. "Caroline is cheating on me," I told him, my voice cracking. "All this time?" he replied, shocked. I confirmed none of the kids were mine. There was silence on the line before he asked if I planned to tie up all my assets in the company behind a prenup. It seemed he understood the legalities better than I thought. "I want to keep 5% and stay as a consulting engineer," he said, planning to discuss the details with HR. "Okay," I responded. "I'll have Brian prepare the paperwork." After a pause, Robert added, "I'm really sorry. It gets easier, I promise." He had gone through a divorce 4 years ago, but never shared much about it, just that it was tough. The next morning, Michelle woke me with coffee. "Let's go, we have a lot to do," she urged. We met with Brian, our lawyer, who had prepared all the documents to buy out Robert. We completed the transaction quickly. Now I was about $1 million in debt on paper, and my salary was almost halved. We then went to Lorraine's office. I showed her the documents, and she was thrilled. "Perfect," she said, planning to submit everything Monday. "Where do you want her served?" she asked, looking for the most embarrassing option. I joked about a billboard at the Super Bowl. Lorraine decided to serve her at her office on Monday. If I sent the papers today, they'd be ready by tomorrow afternoon. I looked at Michelle, who was managing everything. "What now?" I asked. She mentioned 2 more stops before I returned to the office. "Can you manage at home until Monday?" she asked. Unsure, I said I'd need help to stay strong. "Any good news?" She smiled and took me to the medical center where I had a vasectomy, implying good news awaited. "What are we doing here?" I asked. "Looking for good news," she replied. Inside, my doctor greeted us and discussed the possibility of reversing my vasectomy. The success rate was about 95% since it was done 3 years ago. It was a longer surgery with general anesthesia, but it meant I could potentially have children again. The cost wouldn't be covered by insurance, but that seemed a small price for such a chance. "Is this good news?" Michelle asked after we left, seeing my emotional reaction. In a moment of gratitude, I hugged her tightly. "Thank you," I said, then quickly apologized for the close contact. "It's fine, Gary," she reassured me. We then drove to Bill Wainwright's house, where Caroline had worked for years. It was in a nice gated community. Michelle walked up to the door and I followed, wondering what was next. Stephanie was already waiting at the door when we arrived. The security guard had informed her we were coming. "Gary," she greeted. "You must be Michelle, his secretary. Did you call?" Michelle confirmed she did. Stephanie led us into a room that looked like an office, decorated with photos and clearly used by Bill. She sat at the table and motioned for us to sit across from her. This wasn't a social visit. "How can I help you?" she asked, looking at me. I struggled to speak. "Did you know?" I finally managed to ask. Stephanie sighed deeply. "No, I suspected, but had no proof," she said. "I would have left him if I had anything solid." Michelle murmured something under her breath. "Do you have evidence?" Stephanie asked. I nodded. "Proof that the children aren't mine and they share the same father. There's a video of him at my house." I couldn't finish the sentence as emotion overcame me. "Oh, Gary, I'm so sorry," Stephanie said. She shared how she had suspected Bill's affair with Caroline for years, tried to track his phone and email, even confronted him, but he always convinced her she was paranoid. "I had nothing concrete to act on," she explained. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I wondered whether to share my plans, unsure if she might warn him. "What about you, now that you have proof?" I returned the question. She gave a small smile. "I understand, and I don't blame you for not sharing. If you have a good divorce lawyer, I'd appreciate a recommendation." Michelle handed her a business card. "Thank you," Stephanie said, setting a time frame of a week to act. She stood up, signaling the meeting was over. She gave me a quick hug and a peck on the cheek. "Take care of him," she told Michelle, who seemed uncomfortable with the affection. "He deserves better." Back at the office, I wrapped up my work as if I had been in Portland. At the end of the day, Michelle peeked into my office to say she was heading home, her professional demeanor back in place. I thanked her for her help and continued working late. Caroline texted asking when I'd be home. "Another hour or 2, I replied, hoping she'd be asleep by the time I got there. I didn't respond to her, "I love you." When I got home, the house was dark. I checked on Sonia and James, who looked peaceful in sleep. Overwhelmed, I hid in the bathroom to avoid showing Caroline my tears over children that weren't biologically mine. I still didn't know what to do about the kids. They might not remember me if I left, but I loved them dearly. They had been my world just days ago, and now they were just part of this painful situation. I decided to wait and see how things unfolded, aware that the decision might not go in my favor. I went to bed, careful not to wake Caroline. Sleep didn't come easily, and by morning she had already left. The housekeeper was in the kitchen with the children. I wondered if she knew about the affair. Was she in on it, mocking me, or was she innocent? My anger boiled over, and I thought of making sure she'd never work as an au pair again. But then I caught myself. It wasn't fair to take out my anger on her. Maybe she was just caught in the middle. I went to work, and it was as if the past few days had never happened. Michelle was there, everything back to normal. She came in all businesslike, but I noticed she had cleared my schedule for what she called marketing. She handed me my coffee, which she'd been doing for 9 years, and then sat down with her own coffee, something she hadn't done before. "Marketing?" I asked. "Since when am I involved in marketing?" She gave a sly grin that oddly comforted me. "We need to make a plan," she said, referring to the last part of Lorraine's strategy. I was confused. Tell everyone, Michelle instructed. Her friends, family, church, volunteer groups, everyone needs to know what she's done. I was hesitant. It won't look good for me, I said. I'll be the joke. The husband who didn't know he was raising someone else's kids. Michelle insisted. If you don't tell your story, Caroline will, and she'll paint you in a worse light. Speak up first so people are less likely to believe her if she tries to retaliate. Michelle prepared a media package with all the evidence of Caroline's unfaithfulness. It included a private investigator's report, DNA results proving the kids weren't mine, and video footage from our home. That morning, Lorraine emailed me. Stephanie had provided a sample of Bill's DNA, which confirmed he was the father of both kids. Suddenly, they didn't feel like my children anymore. We added this information to the package, ready to send it to Caroline's and my family, and all her contacts on social media. I planned to deliver these packages Monday morning at 10 a.m., the exact moment I intended to expose everything. I just needed to get through the weekend. As an engineer, I quickly built a small device with a motor, a timer, and a battery to create a distraction. I placed it under Sophie's pillow to go off early Saturday morning, disrupting our usual routine. It worked. Sophie came to our room, and there was no intimacy that morning. I kept busy all Saturday, ticking off chores Caroline had nagged me about, avoiding any advances she made that night. Sunday, we spent the day at the zoo. I watched Caroline and the kids, my emotions nearly overwhelming me, but I held it together. On Monday, I was ready. I told Caroline I was working from home. After she left, I told the au pair the kids needed to stay home, which was unusual, but she agreed. Later, Michelle arrived, and after making her coffee, we joined a conference call with Lorraine at 9:30. "This is your last chance to back out," Lorraine warned. I was resolute. "No," I said firmly. "Then I'll see you on the other side," she replied, everything set for the reveal. I watched my email for confirmation of the packages being delivered. The first confirmation came at 10 a.m., then two more shortly after. My phone rang. It was my mom. "Gary, what's happening?" she asked. I told her, "Caroline has been unfaithful for our entire marriage with her boss. The kids aren't mine. I'm filing for divorce." "Gary, you can't," she protested. "Mom, I have to go. I have other calls," I said, hanging up. I was ready to face whatever came next. The phone rang again. This time it was Caroline. "Gary." I didn't pick up. She said we needed to talk. Still, I said nothing. "I'm going back home," she finally said and hung up. Caroline was coming home. I told Michelle I'd step aside. I wanted to ask her to stay, but I couldn't find the words. Just looked at her. "Call me," she said as she left. About 20 minutes later, Caroline got home. She didn't use the garage. I wasn't sure what to expect when she entered. I didn't know if she'd be angry or ashamed. But she walked into my office and sat down. "Gary, she started. I cut her off. "You don't want to know what I think," I said. "I don't want to hear it. You've lied to me for 9 years. The kids aren't mine. Yet you convinced me to have surgery while you continued with your affair with Bill." Her eyes widened at that. "No, Caroline," I kept going. "I don't care what you have to say. My lawyer's card is in the papers you got. If you need to tell me something, talk to her." "What about the kids?" she asked. "What kids?" "I have none, and if it were up to you, I'd never have any. I'd ask why you did this, but I don't want to hear another lie. I'm not interested in your excuses. I just want this over so I can move on." I called the nanny in. Since the office door was open, she could hear me. "You're fired," I said straight away. "Why?" she asked. "Because you covered for her," I pointed at Caroline. "You knew she was involved with her boss. I have proof you knew about the kids not being mine. Leave now, Gary. You can't fire her," Caroline protested. "I pay her." The nanny looked grateful to Caroline. "I've already told the agency you helped hide her affair. If Caroline wants to keep you, she'll have to handle everything herself." The nanny went pale. She wasn't just losing her job. She was off the agency's books. Finding another job would be tough. "Now leave," I said. She ran off. "Did you have to do that?" Caroline asked. "You're still talking?" I said. "I told you, I'm not listening. Get your kids and get out. This is my home too," she claimed. "No, it's in my name only. Until the court says otherwise, leave." She flinched as I shouted. Then her son James came in. "Mommy," Sonia fell. Caroline looked shocked and tearful. She stood, went to her daughter, and left the room. I shut my office door. Soon she was back, carrying Sonia. "Are you going to say goodbye to her?" "Not this," I said. "She's not my daughter, and he's not my son. Take them to their real dad. They're not my responsibility." I heard the front door close, and then her car. She was gone. I finally breathed out, overwhelmed. I hadn't noticed Michelle come in until she hugged me. I broke down in her arms. It took a while to collect myself. 9 years of my life, my marriage, my family gone. I didn't want to face the world. Michelle took charge. "Let's go," she said. Lorraine had told us it would take Caroline hours to get a legal order to stay because of the kids and the house being considered matrimonial. "She'll be back. Do you really want her to kick you out?" We gathered some clothes and important documents, loaded them into Michelle's car, and left. We spent the day at her office. Lorraine called to say the court had issued the order and a restraining order. I couldn't get close to the house without Caroline's lawyer and my own money. I was now living in Michelle's spare room. A week had passed since Caroline's legal move. I'd work, then go to Michelle's place, where she'd have coffee and breakfast ready before we headed to the office together. Nothing seemed to change between us. She was still all business. Other than comforting me that first day, I never smiled. I had no reason to. On Monday morning, we had a meeting with the lawyers from Caroline and Bill's company. Apparently, we had filed a large claim against the company, more than their insurance covered. The company lawyers were straightforward. Lorraine, my lawyer, seemed confident and ready. Their lawyer asked us to settle by firing the senior staff member and keeping Caroline employed for 3 more years, plus $1.5 million. I wasn't fully paying attention to their talk. In the end, they agreed to everything, but I would only receive $750,000. This would help cover some of my debts. "All payments will be made after the divorce is finalized," Lorraine stated. They nodded in agreement. Next, we met with Bill Wainwright's lawyers. After that meeting, I was effectively $500,000 richer. This meant I could pay off my company pension fund loan and still have a little left over once the divorce was through. The last meeting of the day was with Caroline and her lawyers. Caroline was there but wouldn't look at me. Michelle and Lorraine were with me. Caroline's lawyer started by calling the accounting and divorce demands ridiculous, noting my significant assets. Lorraine cut him off, explaining that according to the prenup, the company wasn't part of the divorce. I'd invested heavily in the company recently, using up my savings, my entire retirement fund, and a home equity loan. Caroline's lawyer asked about the kids. Lorraine pointed out the DNA evidence showing the children weren't mine and accused Caroline of fraud. She also mentioned seeking damages since Caroline had tricked me into a surgery believing I was the father. Lorraine's final offer was simple. Caroline could sign the divorce, leave the marital home, and take half of our joint savings, which was just over $9,000. Caroline looked defeated and finally signed the divorce papers. After she moved out, her lawyer informed me that I could return to the house anytime. I decided against it and put the house up for sale instead. It sold for nearly what I owed the bank. 2 months later, I was still living in Michelle's spare room. Caroline moved in with her parents, who sided with her despite everything. Stephanie hadn't divorced Bill, despite her earlier intentions. Bill lost his job and pension, and they had to downsize significantly. I hadn't seen Caroline since the lawyers' meeting and wasn't interested in reconnecting. One day at work, Michelle burst in with news. Bill Wainwright was dead. Allegedly, Stephanie had caught him with Caroline again and shot him. I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Michelle then handed me an envelope. Inside was official confirmation of my divorce. "I'm finally a free man," I said, relieved. Unexpectedly, Michelle kissed me passionately. After the shock, she said, "For 9 years I've taken care of you. You are the most perfect man I have ever met. You've always treated me with respect, never making me uncomfortable or making unwanted advances. And for that, I loved you. I've waited for you for 9 years and now you're free. You've always shown me respect, and that's a form of love too. We make a great team. I know you as well as any wife knows her husband, and you know me just as well. Give me a chance to prove that not all women are dishonest or unfaithful. Please." I was shocked. I remembered all the times we spent together before I learned about the betrayal. I thought about how I stood up for her, even arguing with my business partner to the point where he left the business. Then I realized that I had, and still have, real feelings for Michelle. It's impossible to work so closely with someone for so long and not feel something. While I was with Caroline, I didn't need to think about these feelings, but now I really need to. "Do you have anything to say?" she asked, looking worried. This was the first time I saw her unsure. "How many?" I asked. She looked confused. "How many what?" she asked. "Children," I said. "How many children should we have? Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit." If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.